Get ready to be jolted out of the ordinary and into a world where conversations are charged with intensity and facts. The Lightning Strike Talk Radio with your host, Mohammed Faheem, broadcasting live from the heart of the city on Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio, WCPT 820 AM. Welcome to a radio show that charges through the airwaves with an electricity like no other. Here's your host, Mohammed Faheem.
Good morning, America. This is the Lightning Strike, and I'm your host, Mohammed Faheem, coming to you live from WCPT 820 AM, Chicago's Progressive Talk Powerhouse. On today's show, we're going to be joined by Dr. Bryan Maxwell, who is running for Senate to replace Dick Durbin, one of the lesser-known candidates, but who knows? He may be tomorrow's Mamdani for all you know. Nick Unijewski, who's running for the Illinois Senate, and also we're going to be joined by a very wonderful guest. I'll let Dali Silverberg introduce him later on to you, but he used to be a Secret Service agent. Okay, so Michael is his first name, and we will come back to you with Michael about 8:20, 8:25 in the show. And then on the second hour, we have got former Congresswoman Marie Newman, who is doing a regular segment on our show, joining us at 9:15. Maria Muzaffar will not be joining us today on the show. She is, again, traveling, and she said if she can find a quiet space in the airport, she would call in. Reed Bible joins us from Nevada every week, former special supervisory agent at the Department of Homeland Security, retired immigration attorney, and just a powerhouse of information. We got our regular team over here, Adriana Alvarez and Dali Silverberg, on the show with me today. And Dr. Sheila White will not be joining us. She's got some recording artists that have come into her studio for a recording session this morning. But let's get into the weeds, folks. Today, I want to cut through the noise, because lately you might have noticed that anytime a politician talks about affordability or fairness or the basic right to live a dignified life, somebody somewhere starts screaming, communist, communist. And one name that's been dragged through that mud lately is New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. So today, let me set the record straight, not with labels, but with clarity. Let's try to understand what is the difference between capitalism, communism, democratic socialism, and what is being practiced in our country today, right now, by the Trump administration? Fascism. Okay, let's start with capitalism. That is the system we live in right now, right? Or supposedly, where private businesses compete, people hustle, innovation happens, and yet millions of Americans work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and still can't afford rent, groceries, childcare, or healthcare. Capitalism gives us energy and enterprise, yes, but unchecked, it concentrates wealth in the hands of a few and leaves the rest scrambling for crumbs. And just imagine a guy like Elon Musk recently getting approved by his board for $1 trillion in compensation. What the heck is that? Okay, so that is capitalism as we know it. Now, let's look at communism. This word is getting thrown around like a political grenade, especially by our president, okay? The guy who really does not understand anything at all, who has not declared or not shown us his college transcripts, even to this day, who never volunteered for service for the country, Captain Bone Spurs, as we all know. He keeps on throwing this word, communist, communist, every single time now. But historically, folks, communism means state-controlled production, minimal private property, and centralized power. That's not what Mamdani believes in. He's not calling for a government seizure of private businesses. He's not calling for one-party rule. He's not abolishing markets. So let's retire the fear-mongering. Enough. Now let's look at the rise of American fascism, right? Which really the Democratic Party is kind of like, what the heck is happening? We don't know. The Republicans are like, oh no, we don't know what's happening. And the Trump MAGA followers are like, oh, it's all about America first. Really? America first? Let's not forget about this, folks. This is fascism, especially as practiced by the current Trump administration. So while we are busy arguing over ideologies that may or may not even be on the table, the United States is confronting something far more urgent. This movement under Donald Trump that displays the classic markers of fascism. Not metaphorically, not theoretically, but materially. Using immigrants as political scapegoats. Mass ICE arrest and state violence used as performance indicators. Corporate and political power fused together. Direct attacks on the press, on universities, on elections, on dissent. A leader-centered movement demanding loyalty over principle. This is not the language of democracy, friends. It is the language of domination. In other words, of fascism. And then socialism, or more specifically, democratic socialism. The vision Mamdani actually stands for. A system that keeps markets, keeps democracy, but reins in the chaos of unregulated greed. It says the government should step in to make life livable, public transit that's free and efficient, childcare that doesn't bankrupt families, tenant protections, and yes, even city-owned grocery stores to ensure people aren't held hostage by price gouging. Just think about childcare. People are paying upward of $24,000, $30,000 for childcare, and the childcare workers are making less than $25 an hour in New York, which is not a living wage. So, city-owned grocery stores. In other words, the government that works for the people, not just for the wealthy. So why is this vision making the establishment nervous? Because it threatens the one thing they got above all else, power. A city-owned grocery store challenges corporate monopolies. There's one grocery store chain owner in New York who's threatening to close all his stores and leave New York because he says, oh, we have such thin margins. With such thin margins, sir, how did you become a billionaire? Okay. Free public buses challenge profit-driven transit contractors. Taxing millionaires challenges entrenched wealth. Democratic socialism, folks, does not abolish capitalism, but it forces it to answer to the people it has ignored. And that is the real threat. It's not communism. It's not extremism. It's the radical idea that regular people deserve a fair shot. So today, we are going to dive deep into this. What does Zohran Mamdani's movement signal for the future of American politics? Why is the establishment so afraid? And are we witnessing the first sparks of a new economic contract in this country? This is the lightning strike. The storm has begun, folks. It's time to take cover. And before we go further into the show today, I just want to take a quick break. And after the break, we are going to bring in Dr. Bryan Maxwell, who is going to tell us why he should be the new senator from Illinois. This is the lightning strike. Stay tuned.
You're second 40 being high electric bills, which, by the way, are on the rise. You're also probably unaware of the federal, state, and utility incentives that you qualify for. Take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down this number, 630-785-0031. Again, 630-785-0031. Give Greenlight a call for a no-cost, no-obligation energy assessment, and we'll show you which federal, state, and utility incentives you qualify for. Again, 630-785-0031. Give us a call, 630-785-0031.
Welcome back to the Lightning Strike with Mohammed Faheem.
Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Lightning Strike, and I would like to invite Dr. Bryan Maxwell to join us. Bryan, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me come on today and talk more about my campaign.
Well, so good to have you over here. Reed Bible has also joined us from Henderson, Nevada. Good morning, Reed.
Good morning, everyone.
So let's start off with Dr. Maxwell over here. You are running to replace Dick Durbin. So obviously you are a Democrat. But Bryan, what motivated you to run for the U.S. Senate at this time?
Well, to be honest, after seeing Democrats lose to Trump the second time, and I guess I had hoped that there would be some hard lessons learned. There'd be some moments of introspection after having lost to Trump twice now. And I just didn't see that happening within the Democratic Party, and especially the top two candidates in this race. And I don't think that our country can keep affording to lose to Trump and Republicans. We're seeing the effects of that on our communities, mass federal agents kidnapping people off the streets without due process, food assistance being taken away from tens of millions of people in this country, people's healthcare premiums spiking. We can't afford to keep losing to Trump and Republicans. So I decided to get in this race and offer a different vision of where I think the party in this country should be going.
Okay, so Bryan, running at the state level, I know it's tough. I ran for a congressional seat, and man, that was tough. So running for the Senate, especially against people who have billions of dollars in their campaign funds now. I know Raja Krishnamurthy was gunning for running for the Senate ever since he got into Congress. That was his ultimate goal, is to get into the Senate. Okay. So he has like what, 20 some odd $1 million in his campaign funds. Robin Kelly is coming in strong. She's collecting money. And then we got Juliana Stratton, who the governor has endorsed. How do you plan to fight against these kind of entrenched candidates, Bryan?
You asked why I'm doing it in this moment. I think it wouldn't be possible for a candidate with low name recognition to be running in this race in any other moment than what we're in right now, is where the Democratic Party is the least popular it's ever been. We're seeing candidates come up and run against the establishment and win against unlikely odds. And I think the best example of that recently was Zohran Mamdani, like you were mentioning before. And I think that's why his candidacy is scaring the establishment so much. I mean, he was outspent by, I think, 5 to 10 times in that race.
Yeah.
I think he was outspent by tens of millions of dollars. It was absurd. And a grassroots campaign, that really spoke to people's legitimate concerns, won against that. And I think that really speaks to the power of grassroots organizing, the discontent with the party at the moment. And that's why I'm running. I'm hoping to ride on that energy.
So let's talk a little bit about your background, Bryan.
Yeah.
What is your background? I know that you are an environmental scientist and everything, but public service, community service, what is your background?
Yeah, so my education, I got my PhD from North Carolina State University in agricultural and environmental engineering. So a lot of my career has been working with farmers to help them find solutions to agricultural water quality problems. So whether that's hog farms, corn and soybean farms here in Illinois, dairy farms, farmers have a range of environmental issues that they want to address. So I obviously help with that. I've been working at the university in both the crop science department and helping field test new renewable technologies for the last few years. So that's kind of my professional background. I've also been pretty active in my community for most of my life, in particular with housing. Housing is a pretty core passion of mine as someone who's experienced housing insecurity in my life. This is something that I don't think we're one of the richest countries in the world, and there's no excuse why people in this country should be experiencing housing insecurity.
Okay, let's see if any of our team members have got any questions for you, especially the younger Gen Z generation over here. Dolly, Adriana, you guys got any kind of concerns, questions that you would like to ask Bryan?
I was wondering how you've thought about being, or how you've been received by the city of Chicago, how Democrats have kind of taken your new policies in, and what you think about that. Have you gotten a warm welcome?
I've gotten a warm welcome in certain circles and not a warm welcome in other circles. I think people see any kind of candidate running against the establishment as a threat to the establishment, and that's especially the case within some circles of the Democratic Party, who has traditionally been a party of gatekeeping over the last 30 or 40 years, I think. And I think that's been a strategic mistake. So, but I've gotten a really receptive conversations with the youth and some communities who don't feel like their concerns are being spoken to, especially on college campuses. So many college students are totally turned off by politics at this point. And when I talk to them about my platform of anti-war, Medicare for all, and taxing the billionaires and corporations, they're very encouraged by a candidate running on that kind of platform.
You know, Brian, I was listening to, of all people, Tucker Carlson and
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. They are flipping, and that is so encouraging. And I was listening to an interview this morning, and they were talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene says, I've never seen a Houthi in my district. Why the heck are we going over there bombing Houthis? And
Yeah.
as far as she said, as far as I know, Iran has never killed anyone on American soil. Why are we going to war with Iran on behalf of another country? Yeah, you're right. You know, our
Yeah.
focus needs to redirect now. Reed, you got any questions for Dr. Maxwell over here before we let him go?
I sure do. Good morning, Dr. Maxwell. Thanks for being
All
on the
right.
show
Yep.
today. I'm just wondering, how do you feel about a constitutional amendment that takes personhood away from corporations?
I would love to see that. I think that that's going to be very hard because the number of votes you need for constitutional amendment. I think the most direct way to get money out of politics is to keep encouraging candidates to run who are going to get money out of politics. I think in the short term, that's the most likely way to get money out of politics is to keep inspiring this grassroots energy until we get to the point where we get that constitutional amendment. I totally agree. Yeah, and to speak to your question, your comments, Mohammed, I totally agree. There's a growing bipartisan anti-war sentiment in this country. People are tired of seeing their tax dollars constantly go overseas to propping up foreign governments, endless wars overseas, and the establishment of both parties keeps promising more of the same. So getting money out of politics, stopping spending our federal tax dollars overseas. So many people are tired of this, and that's a growing bipartisan.
Yeah, and especially
Yeah.
look at who we are supporting, Brian. We have, we are so deeply in debt in this country, and then we announced recently that we're going to give $40 billion to a country at at the edge of South America. I mean, come
Yeah.
on, man.
And that really hurt. That really hurt American farmers because
Yeah.
then China was able to buy Argentina soybean and not America's soybean, and that really screwed over farmers. So yeah.
Okay, so we need people like Brian to go to bat for us, folks. Brian, how do people find out about you? Where can we get some more information?
So you can look me up on Maxwell4Senate.com, Maxwell the number 4Senate.com, or you can find me on Instagram or Facebook under the same Maxwell 4Senate. So it's Brian with a Y, Maxwell, because people are always confused which kind of Brian I am. I'm a Brian with a Y.
Okay,
And you
wonderful. Thank you
can
so
find me
much for
online
joining
also.
us. And really appreciate you getting up early in the morning on Sunday to join us over here. And we'll definitely keep in touch with you and get some more information as the campaign progresses. Folks, there is Dr. Bryan Maxwell running for the Illinois representation at the Senate level, replacing Dick Durbin, not the local Illinois State Senate. So please keep that in mind. And that is Brian with the numeral 4 Senate.com.
Maxwell for Senate.
Okay, Maxwell
Maxwell
for
for Senate.
Senate. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. It's time for us to take our second break of the morning, and we'll be back with Michael Sweezy. I can see Mike over there. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
Okay, so
Sorry
what we'll
for
do.
giving you my background for the last half an hour or whatever.
Well, we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes, Mike. We have to take our second break of the morning. We'll be right back after this.
Great.
Thanks, Mohammed. I'm gonna drop off.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Calling all residential and commercial property owners. If you're like me, you're sick and tired of paying high electric bills, which, by the way, are on the rise. You're also probably unaware of the federal, state, and utility incentives that you qualify for. Take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down this number, 630-785-0031. Again, 630-785-0031. Give Greenlight a call for a no-cost, no-obligation energy assessment, and we'll show you which federal, state, and utility incentives you qualify for. Again, 630-785-0031. Give us a call, 630-785-0031.
Welcome back to the Lightning Strike with Mohammed Faheem.
Okay, folks, welcome back to the Lightning Strike. And we got our second guest of the morning over here. We've been trying to connect with Michael Sweezy for quite some time, but obviously with all the secret things that he's been doing in his life, it's been difficult to connect with. Dolly, you want to introduce our guest, please?
I would love to. Hi, first of all, hi, Sweezy. It's really nice to see you. I love that you got dressed for this. This is awesome. Um, so Mr. Sweezy is the campus safety director for Kenyon College. And how long have you been working for Kenyon, Mr. Sweezy?
About 6 years now, a little over
Okay.
6.
And I got to know. Do you care if I call you Michael?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's
I got to
probably
know.
the nicest things people call me. So
I got to know Michael because I was doing some training for the radio station I work for on campus, WKCO, and I was asking him how he got into like campus safety and working as a mediator on college campuses, and he told me he was a former Secret Service agent, and I was so impressed, so surprised. I had so many questions. He so kindly led me and my team into his office and showed us all his photos and talked about his story. So I asked him if he could come on the show, and he is here now. So we have a lot to discuss. Are you excited?
I am. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this. And yeah, I dress up, and you can take the man out of the agent, but you can't take the agent out of the man. So I still got the haircut, all that kind of stuff. So.
Hey, Michael, so where are those Swazi glasses that you guys wear in your...
Actually, oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
Okay. Oh,
all right, there you go.
Now you look the part. Okay.
I've got an earpiece back here somewhere too.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, obviously, first basic interview question, but important one. What motivated you to pursue a career in Secret Service, and how did your expectations compare to the reality of the job?
Well, most people when they're in third grade don't say, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a special agent in the Secret Service. In my case, I went to college for electrical engineering, and my goal was to be an astronaut, go into the space program, things of that sort. And my father had been an agent, though. He, in fact, all the black and white pictures over here are all from my father. And when I was in college, engineering was fine. I was a nerd long before nerd was cool. So, I thought that I was really interested in the things, but it just wasn't scratching the itch. And, there gets a point in engineering where you're sucking up all the liberal arts electives you can just to keep you from thinking about calculus all the time. And I walked into a criminal justice and sociology class and was just fascinated. It was one of those things where every parent hopes their son or daughter walks into that class that says, "Oh, this is it," and so the topic fascinated me. Of course, I had the background information from my dad, and kind of the rest was history.
So what administrations did you work under, if you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I came in at the end of the Bush 41, what we call H.W. Bush administration, and I retired under the Obama administration. The protectees I've worked with, presidents, either former presidents or presidents, because we protect formers also, went back to Ford and, of course, all the way up through Obama.
So can you talk to us a little bit about something and telling the people who obviously don't know much about the Secret Service life, what is something that most people would be surprised to learn about this duty?
Well, a couple of things. One of them is that we don't just do protection. We were actually founded in 1865. We were the first, general federal law enforcement agency in existence to combat counterfeit money. At the end of the Civil War, about a third of the currency in circulation was counterfeit. And so that's why they formed us. Ironically, we were signed into existence the day that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. So, a little bit of, I guess, foreshadowing there. But we only picked up protection in the early 1900s after the McKinley assassination. So there's the investigative side, and they still have the dual duties as investigation, mainly of Treasury-related crimes, though they can arrest for any federal crime, and the protection. Another thing is that we also protect foreign heads of state and heads of government when they come to the U.S. Not ambassadors, things of that sort, but if it's a king, a prime minister, a president, something of that sort. And we do not protect celebrities, stars, all that kind of stuff.
So I remember seeing your photo of the Queen of England and you standing in front of her. That was quite impressive.
I was very thin
then. You're too hard on yourself. So I have many more questions. Can you describe a time when quick thinking and quick action or teamwork made a difference in a particularly hard situation? And how often does that happen in the life of a Secret Service agent?
Well, perfect, and not necessarily for me, but if you ever want the perfect example of teamwork and quick action, watch videos of the Reagan assassination attempt. That was a perfect example of, believe it or not, something that went completely right. Even though there was an attempt and even though he was hit, everything that was done at the time, was done extremely well, and it was all teamwork. As much as anything else, the main goal is that the preparation and the teamwork and the thinking is done as much ahead of the situation as possible. We do advances. The kind of the thing is not to be a hero. We want to keep there from being a need for a hero. But all that involves teamwork. If with any protective advance, you've got a team of agents going out, we call them an advance team, but they're also working with the local police department, the military, the staff, anybody who may be involved in the visit, to make sure all those preparations are made as much ahead of time. And that involves people that people don't necessarily expect us to work with. We work with people, for instance, somebody who may want to have a protest or things of that sort. We want to incorporate that into whatever our plan is, not to eliminate it, but just to make it so that it's controlled, so that the demonstrators can have their time to communicate their message, while at the same time keeping our protectee safe.
So, Michael, I got a question here for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you said that you worked with different administrations, and obviously different administrations have different political outlooks, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does it matter to the Secret Service agent as to what the political angle of an incumbent is?
That's
And
actually one of the biggest questions I get is, it comes down to, you're there to protect them. You may, you're putting your life on the line for them. What if you don't like them? It makes absolutely zero difference. What we always say, we protect the office, we don't protect the person. And our goal is to keep whether it be the president, vice president, to make it so that they can do what they are required to do, by our Constitution, make decisions without fear of their safety.
so
And
when you are interviewing for a position like this, are
Mhm.
there any kind of, obviously there must be psychological tests that you have to take, right?
Yeah, believe it or not, I passed it. Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah, and that's one thing. There's an extensive background, and and the thing is that if political ideology or personal feelings are coming in, like you say, I've protected not only people from both parties, that I may or may not have agreed with, politically and such, with foreign heads of state who've come over, there've been some of my protectees who are objectively truly terrible people.
Okay.
People involved in violence in their countries, people who are living literally like kings while their people are living on $1 a day, things of that sort. If you need to think about that, if something happens, you've already missed the boat. It's that can't be part of your thinking. It can't be part of your action, and that is one of the things that the service, when you're applying, they want to make sure that you are able to separate, you know, whatever your personal ideology is from whatever, it is that you're doing.
Okay,
And people who can't, they get eliminated pretty quickly.
I got one more question for you before I switch back to Dolly. I know Dolly said she has a lot of questions, but do you guys do kind of like practice protecting someone with uh, with a pretend president or a pretend head
Mhm.
of state or somebody, and you guys go through those practices also?
Yeah, there's our training facility in Maryland. We have a whole city built up.
Oh,
It's more than just your old Hogan's Alley of just a facade with a thing.
yeah.
We have an embassy, we have a theater, we have um, a mock-up of the front of Air Force One, we have Marine One, all these situations, and we do things called AOPs, which are attacks on the principal,
Okay.
and it's training after training. And when you're on the one of the big details, like the presidential, the vice presidential details, you have a certain amount of time that you're on, working shift, and then that shift goes and does refresher training. Um, we do training where nothing happens, because you're ramped up, you're expecting something, to happen, especially in training, but sometimes nothing happens, and you have to train yourself not to overreact, sometimes. Um, yeah, the training is extensive, and we also have things like I was a rescue swimmer because President Bush was an avid boater, so we trained to do water rescues, and there's a million things that you wouldn't think of with our training, because not only do we deal with the typical things that you deal with in politics, or with the president, but they have interests. We have to be sure that somebody who was on President Reagan's detail knew how to ride horses, not just well enough to stay on a horse, but also to take care of him if something happened.
And so someone on Dick Cheney's detail should have learned how to do first aid.
Well, we'll leave it with we have very extensive first aid trauma
I
training.
know. I was referring more to Dick Cheney shooting somebody that when he
Yeah, that's
went out hunting with. Dolly, back to you.
Thank you, Mohammed. So this is going back to, I guess, your opinions about your protectees. So what kind of personalities or leadership styles did you observe, and maybe even the similarities and differences between um, one administration versus the other while you were protecting the presidents?
Yeah, with the era that I was in, I would say that first of all, they're all type A personalities. I mean, that kind of goes without saying it. You know, you couldn't survive in a political milieu without it. But yeah, and they all wanted to do good. You know, I mean, it's I don't have the cynicism that everybody goes up there for self-serving, this, that, and the other thing. You may or may not, or I may or may not agree with the way that they, want to do good, or necessarily what they see as being good. But with all the ones I dealt with, that was the intention. They all had different styles. You know, Elder President Bush, was he's very New England, um, very friendly, very outgoing, but also kept a little, back, it seemed like. And of course, now these are my observations. I'm not saying that this is absolutely correct or anything like that, but um, President Clinton was a very people oriented person. I think I can say that, sometimes it drove agents a little bit crazy because we got off. I mean, it's known he got off schedule quite a bit. Um, but in all of my experience with him, the reason why he got off schedule was because he wanted to talk to people and he kept talking to them. And so, President Carter, obviously I was with him as a former president and I was one of his, the supervisor on his detail. So um, he was an incredibly intelligent man. I mean, he's a nuclear engineer, and an officer for the Navy, and just amazingly intelligent and also extremely caring. And I have the most knowledge with him because I was a detail leader, so I was literally on his shoulder and traveling with him and being with him a lot. And so, his whole post presidency was about going out and trying to take care of people, trying to, solve the guinea worm problem, the river blindness, monitoring the elections and things of that sort. He had a lot of faith. He's a very religious man, but he wasn't evangelical. He didn't, at least from what I saw, he didn't overtly try to create Christians like him. He tried to give them a life where they had the luxury of having a religion. So
I
I
worked
mean, like I say, oh, I'm
I
sorry, go
worked
ahead.
very closely with him for the Habitat for Humanity projects. I was one of the project chairmen for the JCs when I was in Houston.
Oh, okay.
So I had the pleasure of meeting him personally for the Habitat for Humanity projects that we were doing.
Hmm.
I was doing radio back in Houston about 30 years back also. So I had the younger President Bush, who was the governor of Texas, as a guest in my studio. I had Bill Clinton come in also. So yeah, I mean, type A personalities,
Hmm.
but wonderful people compared to, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to get into politics today, Mike. I know that you have a job to do, but I got I got my views of the current president over here. It's 8:41. I think we got one more minute to wind up, Dolly, before we bring Read Bible back in. I think we are running a little bit late on Read today.
I'm sorry, Reed. I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Sweezy, but the anecdote with your wife, and also the anecdote about your father and the day you were born. If you could describe that.
Yeah, well, my wife is, there are two things you're talking about coming from the things I took from the service. Two things. One of them she thinks is cute. The other one drives her nuts. The thing that drives her nuts is the fact that to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. Hence the reason why I was logging in here an hour early.
Okay.
Uh, but the thing that she thinks is cute is, when I would open her door, her car door and things of that sort. In the service, there's actually a trained way that you open or protect these doors. So you go up, put your hand on, you look around, you scan the area, you make sure you look to the other agents, make sure everything's good before you ever open the door for the protectee to come out. And it's just kind of one of those examples of things that I will carry with me for the rest of my life.
Yes.
It's always it's the process I go through, and she just kind of makes fun of it and makes fun of me a little bit. But and the other one is actually with my dad being an agent. In fact, well, you can't see it, but that right there is with Kennedy. Um, I was born November 23rd, 1963, and which that's PII, probably shouldn't put out on the air, but anyway, but that's the day after President Kennedy was assassinated, and my father was supposed to be in Dallas, and but they held him back, because I was on the verge of being born, and they didn't want to face the wrath of my mother, and uh, so yeah, he was supposed to have been there, but he wasn't. In fact, the office found out about the assassination because my mom was ironing and watching whatever soap was on. I forget what it was, and they interrupted it. And because back then we didn't have instantaneous communication. She called the office and let them know that the shooting had occurred.
Awesome. Thank you so much, folks. That's Michael Sweezy, former Secret Service agent and now working in campus security at Kenyon College. And Dolly, thank you so much for bringing great guests on the show. And we will bring in our next presenter over here, Mr. Reed Bible. By the way, Michael, Reed worked as a special supervisory agent for the Department of Homeland Security. So he's got something
Oh,
in
okay.
common with you. Is also a Will County board member, retired, and an immigration attorney. Good morning, Reed.
Good morning,
All right, thank
everybody.
you for having me.
And
Thank you.
particularly good morning to Agent Sweezy. I really appreciated his comments because you answered some questions of Mohammed's and Dolly's that actually they were stealing my thunder again, my life. Because there were questions I wanted to ask
Hey,
you.
this is the lightning strike, Reed. What do you expect?
Exactly. But when you expressed your philosophical posture on protecting people that you don't necessarily like, but
Mhm.
you provide your philosophy that you're protecting the office, not necessarily the individual. I really appreciated that philosophy, and I just shows that to me that you are a hero, whether you want to claim to be one or not, because you were willing to do that. So I think that was fantastic. And the only other question I would have, because they already asked the questions, was what now that you're in retirement, when
Mhm.
you see Secret Service operations, like, for example, what happened last year in Pennsylvania when now President Trump, was at a rally and there was that assassination attempt. If you could see faults in how it was handled by Secret Service, if you have you don't have to tell me what they were right now, but if you do you actually assess things even though you're retired and say, hey, they should have done this or they shouldn't have done that?
I do, but at the same time, I also recognize that I'm not in the game anymore, so I don't have all the information. There are things that I can, interpret, and given the same situation where I'm, I'm on a detail of a presidential candidate, a former president and a presidential candidate, who hasn't been officially nominated yet. It's not the presidential detail going around. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. You have the agency has limited resources, they have limited personnel.
Yeah.
It's I don't want to second guess anything that happened because I don't know the situation. I will say that our counter sniper team was, incredible, that day. But like I say, I have things that I can suspect, but I don't want to put things out there that I don't know.
Okay, that's fair enough. I remember having to dispatch some of the agents I supervised to political events too, because
Mhm.
Secret Service did have limited resources.
Right.
And you have to
We'd use
obviously
what we used to call other treasury agents, but now other agents from other agencies to
yeah,
supplement our details.
yeah. Well, it's real pleasure meeting you.
Nice talking to you. I figured that you were, somebody with a similar background with some of the places that you nodded,
Yeah.
when we were,
Exactly. I could relate. Yeah. Um,
Okay. Okay, guys. So we got a former Secret Service agent and a former Department of Homeland Security supervising agent on the show with us today. If you have any questions, feel free to call in. The number to call in is 773-763-9278. This is What is on Your Mind segment. It is sponsored by Ray Hanania, and you can go to hanania.com, HANANIA.com, to check out who Ray is and what kind of writing he does. He's a former City Hall reporter who's got his own blog spot going now on Substack. So check out hanania.com. And if you want to call us, 773-763-9278. And you can also text us on that line. This is the Lightning Strike. I'm your host, Mohammed Faheem. And Reed, what you got on your mind for today, sir? What do you want to talk about?
Well, I got several things today, Mohammed, but I know that time is a constraint, so I'm going to restrict myself to just one. I want to talk about the fact that this week we ended the government shutdown, and it was reopened with a vote that was to fund a continuing resolution to refund the government, get it open again. But besides it not including a restoration of those enhanced subsidies for the ACA, it also included what could be referred to as an ex post facto law. And I'll explain what that is for the audience. But this ex post facto law was basically designed to punish Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, who did the inquiry into the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol back in 2021. Now, what ex post facto is, this is a provision in our Constitution that says that you are not supposed to legislate things retroactively to make them criminal in nature or to retroactively impose some kind of a punishment on someone. And the courts have, for the most part, interpreted that provision in the Constitution as being applicable to criminal matters, although there was no distinction made in the Constitution between criminal and civic when it comes to ex post facto laws. And there are more and more courts that are tending to embrace the idea that it should be also applicable to civic matters when you are creating a cause of action against somebody that's really punitive in nature, not regulatory. And that seems to be what has happened in this case, is that there was a cause of action created that allowed for 8 U.S. senators to consider suing the U.S. government for Jack Smith having collected data about them, their communications. He intercepted some emails, he got some toll records that he subpoenaed, and he did this with the permission of a federal district court magistrate, Judge James Boasberg. So it wasn't as if he did this all on his own, arbitrarily, that kind of thing. He had to follow guidelines of the DOJ and also the judge who is overseeing his investigation. But nevertheless, at the very last minute, this funding that was passed to reopen the government, the Senate sneaked in this provision, which I think half the senators didn't even know were there, that these senators can sue for every instance of this monitoring of their communications up to $500,000 per instance. And of the 8 senators and the 1 representative that I guess were ones who were surveyed by Smith, only 2 of the senators whom you can expect would be the ones, Leslie Graham and Tuberville of Alabama, they still want to sue the U.S. government. And basically they want to sue the American people and get up to $500,000 for Jack Smith doing what he was lawfully authorized to do in investigating the insurrection. And most of the members of the House, as well as the Senate, don't want anything to do with this. I understand that Michael Johnson plans on having legislation introduced to repeal that part of the continuing resolution to fund the government. And I hope they get to it right away, because this is ridiculous. All this is taking more money out of our pockets for something that is a political dispute in nature. And we shouldn't be legislating political disputes into the creation of a cause of action to sue us when the man, Jack Smith, was doing something perfectly legitimate. He was investigating a crime, a massive crime that happened at our nation's capital. So, and I think most of the members of Congress realize that these kinds of disputes ought to be debated, they ought to be discussed, but they shouldn't be causes of action. They're political in nature, not really criminal. And that's what this is doing, even though they claim it's a civic penalty. It really is punitive in nature. Well, that's the fine line to distinguish between what's civil and what's criminal nature. If it's punitive in nature, we're talking crimes. If it's just regulatory nature, then you might be able to get away with an ex post facto law. But even then, our founders were not fans of ex post facto laws. And I think that's why they never distinguished between its applicability to a criminal matter versus a civil matter.
Well, Reed, my take on the whole thing is we got a convicted felon with 34 felonies as our president. Okay.
Yes.
Just the very the very thought of someone like that leading our country
Yeah.
is enough to make me want to throw up. Okay. And what do we expect from his followers? I mean, these people are all out to gouge the American public as much as possible. I started off with my monologue that I had sent out to all of you guys also about the difference between capitalism, communism, and democratic socialism.
Yeah.
And if you look at the so-called leadership that we have in our country right now, especially at the federal level, these people are not even capitalists. These people go beyond capitalism into, I don't know what kind of word I can I can bring up.
I think the
President
phrase is
Trump,
crony capitalism. Crony capitalism, I think.
President Trump, his entire gig is how to make money for him and his family. Okay, the hell with the country. It's remember what was who was that who said let them eat cake, Mary Antoinette or something?
Yes. She supposedly said that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. When people are suffering over here, when SNAP benefits were being not given at all, 42 million Americans, including 16 million children, were going hungry, and our president was throwing a ball
Yeah.
at Mar-a-Lago
Yeah.
and spending 300 plus million dollars on creating a ballroom. His defense, he's saying that, oh, it's all people donating money. Why don't you take that kind of donations and fund some social programs?
Yeah. The callousness, the indifference towards the suffering is just palpable. And have a great Gatsby party, not one Saturday, but 2 Saturdays consecutively while SNAP benefits are running out. How tone deaf is that, folks? So,
And that is something that most people are not understanding over here, is that these people are out to get us for themselves. It's not about the country. The military industrial complex also comes into play, Reed, day in and day out. And when we talk about it, people are like, aren't you afraid to talk about those things? They're going to come after you. Heck, my children and my grandchildren are going to be asking these questions as to when you saw something happening, why didn't you say something or do something?
yeah, and Mohammed, true capitalism involves the protection of competition. That's the bulwark of capitalism, is to allow competition. They don't want competition. They do everything they can to suppress competition. They don't want antitrust laws enforced. It's just they're trying to tell us they're capitalists when they're doing everything that's anti-capitalist, because it makes them richer. When you don't have a competitor, you're the only game in town. Of course, you're going to make reams of money, tons of money. And the stats bear that out. Over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we have record corporate profits. And while small businesses are suffering and going out of business, instead of us helping them, maybe by revisions in our tax code that help nurture small businesses instead of giving billions of dollars each year to a well-established industry, the petroleum industry. What are we doing with that? That's absurd.
Well, let's see. Adriana has been pretty quiet all morning so far. Adriana, you had no questions for anybody so far. What's on your mind?
No, I didn't have any questions mainly because it was um it's kind of the same questions that we kind of hear and when either somebody is running and or somebody has like a take on like how the politics are going. It's one of those for me as Gen Z, it's like, okay, how do you appeal to Gen Z? And also how do you kind of navigate throughout the media of everything? Because one thing that we're seeing a lot more with politicians is their use of social media.
Hmm.
So, but one thing that I would like to talk about, speaking of the use of social media, is that the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has spoken out about immigration. And a lot of people are now in a disarray about it. So I'm going to read very quickly what they had to say, and then what I'm seeing the views of people about this. So they said to our immigrant brothers and sisters, we stand with you in suffering. Since one member suffers, all suffer. You are not alone. We note with gratitude that many of our clergy, consecrated religious and lay faithful already accompany and assist immigrants in meeting their basic human needs. We urge all people of goodwill to continue to expand such efforts. We oppose the indiscriminate mass of we we oppose the indiscriminate mass deportation of people. We pray for an end to dehumanizing rhetoric and violence, whether directed at immigrants or at law enforcement. We pray that the Lord may guide the leaders of our nation and that we are grateful for past, present opportunities to dialogue with public and elected officials. In this dialogue, we continue to advocate for the meaningful immigration reform. So people saw this, and there's been an uproar of different opinions on it because for a lot of individuals, Catholicism is very big in the United States. So it's one of those things. Do you follow your faith or do you follow your country on this situation? And some people have the idea that, yes, they're Catholic, but they're like the law is the law and you have to deport people regardless of who they are. And people are like, well, they said they were going for the worst of the worst, but families are getting separated. Some people still don't believe that families are getting separated. They don't believe that they're going after mothers and fathers that go to work to make a living for their family and give their children a better lives. They don't believe that. They believe that it's only criminals getting taken. And with this, some individuals brought up how our current pope is against abortion and gay marriage. And they said, well, he's against this, so are you going to follow that as well? Because they're trying to make a jab at those who believe that love is love and that people should have an option to pro-choice regardless of their opinions. So it's one of those things um that people are having an issue about. And also, I was speaking about this on Friday with some other people, and my take on it was that, well, the Bible is just a bunch of stories that aren't supposed to be really taken literally because there's scripture readings and all that saying, well, if your hands cause you to sin, cut them off. Okay, so are you going to go cut off your hands right then and there? There's so many things in there, and it's supposed to be stories. Well, how I went to Catholic school my entire life, so how we were taught was that the Bible is basically just a love letter to people, and there's stories and there's different things in there for people to kind of understand, but it's not to be taken entirely literally. So it's one of those things where it's like, do you follow your faith or do you follow the politics of things happening? But it's also that church and state is no longer separate because
Mhm.
we're seeing that politicians are bringing their faith and their beliefs into politics. We see that all the time. We're seeing that with what happened with Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, and that Turning Point's actually coming to a lot more campuses. They were recently on my campus,
Hmm.
and that was not taken in the nicest tone because they came to a campus that's 95% diversity. And a lot of people were very upset that they were even here. So it's one of those things that's like, are we ever going to have a separation of church and state ever again, regardless of what the faith is? Because it doesn't just have to be Catholicism, Christian, Hinduism, anything like that. Are we ever going to have that that divide of church and state? And if so, do people want that divide?
Okay, so we've gone past our 9 o'clock break today. I don't know if the station wanted to take the break or not, but let's continue the conversation. Then, folks, if you want to join the conversation over here, the number to call in is 773-763-9278. Again, this is sponsored by Hanania.com. Ray Hanania does a Substack and also writes for it now a couple of local newspapers, and always there to support us, and we should be supporting local journalism also. And let's continue the conversation, okay? And again, if you want to join us, the number to call in is 773-763-9278. I'm Mohammed Faheem. This is the Lightning Strike. It's about 3 minutes past 9 o'clock in the morning. At about 9:15, former Congresswoman Murray Newman would be joining us with her segment, and she is also going to have Nick Unijewski, who is running for the Illinois Senate, as a guest on the show. And Murray is also going to talk about the new guard versus the old guard in politics, and also little known facts about the Epstein files. I want to come back to the Epstein boondoggle now, Reed. Okay.
You do? Okay.
Okay.
I have some comments to make about what Adriana said too, but go ahead.
So our president seems hell-bent on telling people that there is nothing to see there. Why go back to something that happened 15, 20 years back?
Oh, good.
Okay. Now they are trying to bring in Congress people into the Situation Room where war policy is decided, and there are no cameras, no nothing, no recordings being done, and to bring in a congresswoman in there and try to lean on her to change her signature. I mean, this is beyond ridiculous, right? If there's nothing to hide, why go to all of these shenanigans now? Mike Johnson is going to lose his shirt once this administration is over. Mike Johnson should be brought up in front of every single court in the country for what he's doing to us.
Yeah.
Kash Patel, of course,
Yeah.
he should be held accountable for all of the gymnastics that he is doing with the FBI.
And did you notice, Mohammed, also that the deputy director of the FBI, who
Don
is
Bongino.
a former Secret Service agent, who, along with Kash Patel, was insisting that as soon as they got into power, boy, everything about the Epstein situation was going to be disclosed. Suddenly, you don't hear from him anymore, because I think he was more committed to that than Patel was. But now it's there. All of them are taking the exact opposite situation, including Trump himself. When he was running, he was insistent. He was going to do what his MAGA supporters want. We're going to disclose these files as soon as I get into office. And then suddenly things changed. So I guess he didn't know he was so, I can't say because I haven't seen the files for sure, but it looks like the files are replete with his name in it, and perhaps he wasn't aware just how much he is mentioned in those files. But the emails we got this week certainly indicate that there's a whole lot of stuff going on in those files that involve not only Trump, but many other people. I believe there are Democrats and Republicans alike that are in all through those files, as well as prominent, powerful personalities that are American as well as foreign, as in the case of former Prince Andrew of England.
Right. So Prince Andrew, obviously, poor thing, was outed out. Okay.
Yeah.
And they have taken away his royal titles and everything, I'm told.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I don't know if this applies to his daughters either, because they were born princesses. Not that I'm that concerned, because I've never been into the royalty thing anyway. But what I am concerned about is that they took a U.S. Congresswoman and put her in the Situation Room in the White House to try to lean on her to get her to take away her vote from the discharge petition. And then they try to cover up by saying that press secretary that Trump's got, I forgot her name now, but you know who I mean.
Caroline Leavitt.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
She's
I
trying to
will
make
never
that.
forget that name, Reed, as long as I live.
She's just,
It reminds me of of that Baghdad Bob, okay?
She's Baghdad Bob, only blonde and female, and she's trying to
Okay.
convert a coercion into somehow or another transparency. I mean, she must think we're stupid.
Okay. It goes to show our transparency, folks.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And what Adriana was bringing up today, with religion, that shows the maelstrom that we brew when we mix religion with politics. And some of the founders, like Thomas Jefferson, was adamant about separating the two. There's because it's so replete with problems. First of all, which religion is going to be the dominant religion? Oh, today it might be Christianity, it might be Judaism and Buddhism in the future. Which religion is going to be the
Hey,
religion?
Reed, when you say Christianity, who's Christianity?
Yeah, that's the other problem is the interpretation.
Okay.
Are we going to literally take an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth?
Yeah,
Or is it subject to interpretation, which it has been? For example, my interpretation of that is that it's a kind of a parable about using moderation, having proportionality, matching up the offense with the punishment. And but it doesn't mean every time something happens that you do exactly the same thing to somebody else. There has to be proportionality, and but again, it's a subject to interpretation.
yeah, it's
Um,
it's very interesting because that's what people are using against each other now.
yeah,
Because in for political beliefs and everything like that, I remember talking about this on another radio station. We have people they call in, they can text and all that, and they use it to patronize people. They use it to patronize people like, "You're a Catholic woman. Why aren't you more open-minded about this?" I was like, "Oh my goodness, why are we using religion in politics? It's
yeah,
ridiculous." And it's one of those things that's like you don't follow, some people don't follow every single thing that their bishop, their pope, they're gonna say. And that's the one thing about religion that you're always taught, regardless of what religion it is, there's that aspect of free will.
absolutely.
And if there wasn't any free will, we would all believe the exact same thing and believe in the exact same higher power, or that we wouldn't believe in anything at all.
And we also believe in the freedom of religion. Well, inherent in the idea of having a state religion is the oppression or suppression of another religion. One religion is displacing another one. So that's why you keep religion out of politics. We're a sectarian nation, not a secular one. We don't want a theocracy here or
That's
a Christian
and that's
caliphate.
what our founding fathers wanted, folks.
Yeah,
Okay, that's why they wanted to have the separation of church and religion. That's what our Constitution is also says all the time. But who reads the Constitution now? I don't think that many people even know that what are the different parts of the Constitution. Leave alone what is the spirit of the Constitution. Carl Moose has also joined us, and Carl would be coming in with his segment on what is happening in the scientific world. And I'm so glad that Carl is back on terra firma because. Our president, I'm so sorry, our administration, not the president, because this guy really doesn't do anything. It is the guys, people behind him who are pulling the strings on everything that is happening. The entire country went into a tailspin. We were without a functioning government for over 40 days. Which country, show me one country in the world, folks, which has this kind of a provision in there. And even now, we know that it's not going to be, you know, smooth sailing. Come January, this entire rigmarole is going to be replayed again.
yes, exactly.
Okay, so former Congresswoman and author, Substack warrior, Murray Newman is joining us. Murray, good morning.
Good morning.
So I started off with my rant, Murray, on the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism
Yep.
in the morning, and I had sent out the monologue. And Ray Hanania has also published that. I wrote an article on the same topic, so Ray has published that on his Substack as a as an op-ed from me and the Lightning Strike. I'll share that link with you guys. This is so ridiculous what is happening in our country. Murray, you missed some great guests in the morning today. We had Dr. Bryan Maxwell, who is running for the Senate. and he's one of the candidates that is trying to go after Dick Durbin's seat,
Yeah.
one of the not so well-known candidates.
Yeah.
And it was good to hear from him, good to hear his perspective. And my question to him was, how are you going to fight the machine, which has millions of dollars that these candidates have got,
Yeah.
in their war chest, including Raja Krishnamurti, who from day one, he wanted to go after becoming a senator, not a congressman. So he was collecting all of these millions of dollars. And then obviously we have Juliana Stratton and Dr. Robin Kelly. These are the top three leaders. So we did ask Dr. Maxwell, how are you planning on competing against these people? And so very, very interesting interview. And then we had Michael Sweezy that Dolly brought in, former Secret Service agent.
Oh, interesting.
And he was talking about his experiences with serving the different presidents and also former presidents, and fascinating conversation with him also. So we got about 9:13. I think we can get you started a little bit early today. And so old guard versus new guard, Marie, what's on your mind?
Yeah, and as a precursor, listeners should know I'm going to be bringing on some what I call new guard candidates.
Okay, so Nick is
Here's
joining us
what
also.
I'm sorry.
Nick is joining us. I'm just letting him
Good,
in.
good, great. I wanted to set up what I mean by new guard, and I'll be talking about this in my Substack quite a bit, folks. So if you want to go to at Marie Newman Studio on Substack, I'll be sharing more of this information. But I'm calling the slate of new guard candidates the folks that are our future, right? And I want to be clear, it's not ageist to say that we need new thinking. It is not always that the candidates that are part of the new guard are the youngest candidates. Sometimes they're older candidates, but they have a new way of thinking. It is no longer acceptable to the American public to be highly incrementalist. Of course, sometimes we can only get smaller things passed, but in general, we do have to be big, bold, and transformative. We are in an FDR period. I really believe that 100%. We have an economic front that where we have haves and have-nots worse than ever before. Very similar, interestingly, in terms of the disparity between folks in working families and workers to the very richest, it's actually worse than it was during the Depression in
Yeah,
terms of those two
1933.
comparing those two groups. So the economic equity in this country is zero. It's only inequity. The average homeowner or the average age of a first time buyer is now 40 years old. It used to be 28 just 10 years ago.
Yep.
So we are no longer in a situation where we can keep sweeping it under the rug. My mom had an old saying like, if we keep sweeping stuff under the rug, there's going to be a big bump and someone's going to trip and fall. And we've tripped and we've fall. So, we are where we are. But this new guard are folks that think differently about the economy, healthcare, everybody's everyday issues, right? And they think differently. You know why? Because they've lived it. And this is the thing. So whether it is, Abdul, who's running for Senate in Michigan, or it is, Graham Plattner in Maine, everybody says it a different way, but is talking about affordability. There's an old saying, and it's super corny, all politics is local. It is incredibly true. So, what I'm coaching about 8 candidates right now, and I keep telling them, talk about it the way your district talks about it. Sit down with everybody. So the reason I'm bringing my guest on, and I'll introduce him in a hot minute. Nick Unijewski is running for Illinois State Senate. So not U.S. Senate, but Illinois State Senate, and that's District number 6, and it covers places like Wrigleyville, Lincoln Park, Lakeview, Buena Park, Ravenswood, and I'll let you share more. But Nick is running because he's part of the New Guard. He's a new thinker, and he has amazing ideas. And I'm a little picky about transportation and housing, but he has some very I think transformative ideas in transportation, and he's very knowledgeable there. So he has a great policy background. He's worked for the city for many years in policy and really understands how things work, particularly housing and transportation. He has worked for various campaigns, and he's just a bright star and also just a great human. So with that, I'll introduce Nick Unijewski running for Illinois 6th State Senate.
Good morning, Nick.
Welcome.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Marie, and thank you, Mohammed, for having me on. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, good. We're so glad. Nick, tell us a little bit about you and why you're running.
Yeah, so my name is Nick Unijewski. I am running for state senate in the 6th district, which covers most of the north side of Chicago. And in this moment, we need new energy, we need new leadership, but more than anything, we really need a new fighter. People who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo and take a swing. We are in a dark time as a country right now. We have a president that is tearing people apart, who is defunding social services. And at the state level, that's where all these big fights are going to be held for the next 4 years. So you need people that will be in there, certainly fighting back against a lot of the stuff happening federally, but also people that are unafraid to take a swing for the people here. We have a huge crisis in the state of Illinois with housing. We need to build more housing. And when I say that, we need to reform all of our zoning laws statewide so we can legalize things like coach houses and four flats by right, because there's this problem that people want to buy a home, but they can't because that middle housing stock doesn't exist. Or they're longtime owners or renters that are getting priced out of the neighborhoods we love. And so if we make these zoning reforms statewide, then we can get more properties on the rolls faster. We can also do things like go after private equity that's buying up a lot of housing stock now and just sitting on it and price gouging rents. And
Nick, the big dog Zillow Corporation, they went in and they bought out a lot of homes, and that jacked up the prices. And eventually, their inventory got so bloated and no one was buying it that they ended up losing a ton of money on their so-called investment. And that is something that I'm so glad that you're bringing that out about private equity coming in and buying houses. The zoning requirements, I don't know if you are aware that I'm a commissioner over here in my local village for the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Plan Commission, I see a lot of new developers coming in and wanting to build only rental housing now. But like Marie was saying, the average age for a new home buyer is now 40 years old. It used to be 28 about 10 years back. Young people are being squeezed out of the housing market.
Yeah, and in our area too, I mean, there are lines around the block in Lakeview to rent. People are outbidding each other on rents because there's just not any housing available. That we need to build more and do it at a pace that keeps up with the demand. It's just not happening now. And we need Democrats to get in front of it because a lot of the states that are making these reforms to both the zoning, also things like construction codes, they're states like Montana, they're states like Texas. And we know that if we don't build more housing, people will move. They will move to those states where it is more affordable, like Montana or Texas. We've seen them gain congressional seats in the last census. Illinois is on track to lose maybe one, maybe two seats by 2030. And so if we do nothing, people are going to move out of our state, and we might honestly never win an election again as Democrats. So if you're not going to have more housing for economic reasons, do it for winning elections. Do it for electoral.
Practical. Yeah. You hit a nerve with me talking about when you're living in this economic environment and housing, what's the next biggest expense next to healthcare is transportation, right? So tell us a little bit about your policy because I think you have a really unique way of looking at it. Please share.
Yeah, on transit, we have more people in this district that take transit to work than anywhere else in the state. I don't have a car, and I don't hate people who do have cars. It's just we should be planning our future around a different kind of movement because people don't move the same anymore.
Yeah.
We can't just keep throwing money at a system designed decades ago that refuses to change. So I'm very thankful that the state did fund our transit, but we have to modernize it at the same time. I would love to have a bus lane on Lakeshore Drive so we can actually get to and from downtown.
That'd be great.
That's the biggest thing. I grew up in Orland Park and I went to Loyola, go Blurs. But it took me 2.5 hours on 2 different trains to get to and from downtown every day. No one's going to take the train if it takes twice or 3 times as long to get where you need to go versus going in a car. So we need to evolve. I mean, Metra is still using diesel locomotives. And so I would love to have investment from the state so we can accelerate either battery powered engines or electrify Metra in certain areas where we can, like the Rock Island line or the UP lines. There's a lot we can do. But what we really need now is leaders with that bold vision for the future. People who have an idea of what we can do. We can learn from other states and cities and countries that do things a lot better than we have. You have to evolve with the times. And that's just not happening now with our current leadership.
It is shameful that we do not have high-speed rail in this country when almost all of Europe, most of Asia, like it is a joke that we don't have high-speed rail and we don't have renewable energy rail and all the things, right? It's embarrassing. It was my biggest frustration in Congress when I sat on the Transportation Committee that people just could not understand this. And some Democrats too. It was mostly Republicans, but Democrats. Let's turn our attention. There's lots of things that are quite frankly scary with this administration that affect local politics. So, Nick, what do you think is the number one thing that we're ignoring at our risk here that maybe we all don't have our eye on?
There's a lot that's happening. People are angry. People want hope in what can be.
Yeah.
Our district, we have the highest concentration neighborhood, the largest LGBTQ neighborhood in the Midwest, and that, of course, is North Halstead. And people are really worried about their rights being under attack. We're seeing the president attack trans people all day long, every day. We're seeing other states roll back abortion rights. We're seeing them do terrifying things that we are saying sentences where we never thought we would say. They're kidnapping people from our streets in Lincoln Park and Lakeview. So they want a champion. And so when we talk about the old guard versus the new guard, it's, again, not being afraid to take a swing, sometimes even against our own party. The structures, we do not understand the fire on the ground right now, people that really want something more.
Right.
Nick, I think I agree with you that we got to take a swing at our own party. That's where the rot is starting now, because the old guard just does not want to give up their old ways of doing business. It's the same old thing, and I get so frustrated when they are not listening to the public out there. They are listening to pollsters. Okay, the pollsters. I don't know how many of you pick up an unknown call when someone calls in, or I get a message saying, "Oh, we are this and that, we are polling about this." I don't respond to those at all. And our old guard still seems to think that, yeah, those are the things that work. And Mamdani showed very well in New York what can work and what should and what will work. So please, Murray, continue.
So, honestly, this is the reason why we need the new guard, is that we need new thinkers, creative thinking, innovative thinking. And when I say new thinking, it can be someone younger like Nick Unijewski, or it could be someone older with new thinking. But I think we all want a fresh perspective. And I do predict here and now that we will see the new guard flush in. I think that if we drill up to Congress, that the new guard is probably going to replace, I bet we get 40 seats this time, and it'll be in some cases taking out incumbents that maybe we thank them for their service and they move on and time to move on, or Republicans. So I think we're going to have a big bold wave come in, and that will allow us to have new thinking. And just to reiterate my disdain right now for Chuck Schumer's leadership, it is beyond repugnant how he has run his caucus. It's clear that his caucus isn't happy with it. It's clear that the American people aren't happy with it. But Nick, hey, thank you so much. Stay safe on the trail. We're so happy that you're running and stepping up. And we'll have you back when it's a little farther down the road in the race. So thanks for coming today.
Hey, Nick, how do people find out about your race?
Yes, to find out more about me and our race, you can visit our website, nick4illinois.com.
And is that the numeral 4 or is it the FOR?
That is FOR.
And also you can see Nick all over social media. So just Google him on any platform and you'll see him.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thank
Have
you
a great
so much
day.
for joining us, Nick. And
Okay.
so, Murray, back to what you wanted to talk about, the Epstein files. We did have a short discussion about the Epstein files in the first hour, and especially our president bringing in a sitting member of Congress into the Situation Room
To the scandal.
where, to pressure her to change her vote. I mean,
It's really bad when you can't get Lauren Boebert to see your way. I mean, that's bad. We're at the bottom of the barrel now, Trump. Well, and just to remind everybody, the SCIF, which is the Situation Room, is a completely sealed, cannot have phones, cannot have communication with the outside world. It's meant for when there are dire emergencies. The President Obama and his cabinet went in there when they were in the last drugs of the war and taking out Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden, yeah.
So that's the level of stuff. You don't take them in when you're trying to whip a congressperson. That is ridiculous. Like it's beyond ridiculous and it's childish behavior. So, but Epstein files. So interest. There's a couple of interesting things that might be getting ignored a little bit, and I think it's important. I'll be talking about this on my Substack. Is that even let's say that we get through the most likely outcome with this vote coming up this week is that it passes the House, right? Gets out of the House, let's say with a good majority. Let's say another 50 Republicans jump on than the 8 that are on there right now. Good news, right? It gets the Senate. We would apply pressure, and the Senate, it would be great if they got a non-vetoable vote, which would be 67 or more. I don't think that's going to happen in the Senate. I think there may be one or two Republicans that come over, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, maybe I'll be surprised, and that will be wonderful. But then he's in the dilemma of he being Trump is like, oh gosh, why don't I want to have this investigated? Why don't I want to reveal all these? And I just want to make clear with everybody that he has declared an investigation which allows him to not release things. So it's a pretty good strategy if I'm being objective. But just remember that all that says is that he's horrified about what's in those files. It's primarily the videotapes and the audio tapes that are the problem. And then the thing that a lot of people don't realize is that what Jeffrey Epstein did for a living, he was a financier and worked in ostensibly in real estate and other matters, but the most of his money came from blackmail and then trafficking these young girls. So the blackmail money is where his big money came from. And so those videotapes and those audio tapes are the things we really want to hear because, of course, these emails reveal disgusting, depraved things, right? But the audio tapes and the videotapes are going to share the real evidence that's irrefutable, right? So know that. The second thing, and this is a little bit of good news. Let's say, okay, we get through the Senate and it doesn't pass, but we've made it clear to the American people this is disgusting. We're going to keep it in the news. There's a bit of good news here, folks, is that independents that voted for Trump and rolled the dice and said, hey, I just want a better economy. I don't care how bad this dude is. The economy is in shambles and they're done with him. And then this was quite literally, this Epstein stuff is the nail in the coffin. Okay, he's not only horrifying at the economy and is an absolute baboon when it comes to understanding anything economic. I mean, truly, like he still thinks tariffs are a good thing. He's just an absolute idiot. So then, you know, they now see independence. Okay, he's an idiot on the economy and he can't manage his way out of a paper hat. Oh, and he's absolutely depraved and disgusting. Guess what? Those independents, the tune of whatever it was, about 20% of the electorate that voted for him, that's a big deal. Then in the midterms, we get those 40 seats, and in 2028, we win. So the independents, it doesn't matter if he gets adjudicated. Honestly, it doesn't. It just has won over the independents for now. We can adjudicate him after he gets out of office. Because this is a personal, by the way, so just and one other thing to explain to everybody, the immunity he has is with regard to his professional actions, not his personal actions. So that if in fact it comes out that he has done something wrong with regard to the Epstein files, then that's a personal matter and he can be adjudicated. So those are all the things. It's for the independents. So let's hang on to that bright light.
Oh goodness, oh goodness. I mean, I would have never imagined that our country would come to this, Marie. I mean, honestly,
I know.
we went through a lot of stuff with some of the past presidents, but nothing to this extent.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
Well, I mean, let's be honest. This is why I think it's funny when people like they keep seeing there's Democrats and they're like, I don't care. I don't care if every single Democrat I've ever talked to is on in that file. All of them should be adjudicated. Like, like come on. Like I don't care if you're purple, green, orange, or yellow. Like let it out, and those people need to be prosecuted. Like, come on.
one
It
of
doesn't
the
matter. Clinton, I could care less. I was never the biggest fan. I mean, he was a decent president, but he was an awful human. So like, I don't care. I absolutely don't care.
that's I think that's probably across the board. That's why these guys are fighting so hard,
Yep.
and they don't want things to come out to hurt their legacy, for lack of a better word.
Oh,
Okay, because most of these people who are getting libraries made of for
oh,
their terms in office, all of those things, people are just going to go and tear them apart once they get to see how awful these they were as human beings.
yeah.
And I don't think Maria is going to be joining us today. She is stuck at an airport, and she did text me that if she can find a quiet space, that she will call in. So she's been doing some massive traveling, I guess. So we got
Yeah.
a little bit more time. I wanted to go back to my rant this morning and just repeat that if you folks can bear with me, and then we can continue with the conversations. So I started off by saying that today we want to cut through the noise because lately you might have noticed that anytime a politician talks about affordability or fairness or the basic right to live a dignified life, somebody somewhere starts screaming communist. And one name that's been dragged through the mud lately is New York Assemblyman and Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. So today, let's set the record straight, not with labels, but with clarity. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And that's what I started off talking about this morning. That let's start with capitalism. That is the system we live in right now, where private businesses compete, people hustle, innovation happens, and yet millions of Americans work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and still can't afford rent, groceries, childcare, or healthcare. Capitalism gives us energy and enterprise, yes, but unchecked. It concentrates wealth in the hands of a few and leaves the rest scrambling for crumbs now. Just imagine, Marie, someone getting a $1 trillion pay package. I mean, this this
Yeah,
is
the Trump thing or the Musk thing. That's disgusting. The lack of guardrails, and part of this is that there's never been a shareholder and um, money adjacent to the board strategy ever. And there's never been any legislation. It is not, I mean, because I am a fair capitalist, meaning that
yeah,
I want capitalism to work for everybody and be fair and unrig the economy. Um, there are some things, we all know that the fire department, the mail service, all those things are actually socialist, right? They just are,
yeah,
we know that. So it's not like we don't use the best practices of every ism. So, we understand in socialism the right to organize and have services for the greater good of all is very important. So let's look at this as a best practices. Any group that goes unchecked at any time, just like the kindergartners in your class that all have too much sugar, you got to keep them in check. And that's what the tech bros are right now. Like, you got to keep these dudes in check, or else they're going to ask for $1 trillion pay package, and their flipping board says yes.
yeah.
So it's, good Lord.
Okay, so the word communism gets thrown about quite a bit now, especially our president keeps on saying, "Oh, Zohran Mamdani is a communist." Okay, come on. So this is getting thrown around like a political grenade now, folks. But historically, communism means state-controlled production, minimal private property, and centralized power. That's
Right.
not what Mamdani believes in, right? He's not calling for a government seizure of private business. He's not calling for a one-party rule. In fact, our president is calling for a one-party rule,
That's
if
right.
anyone is. Okay.
If we were ever to call anyone a communist or socialist, it's Trump. He has taken over the means of production in four major companies now. He has put the equity of, and God knows where that money is really coming or going to, you know.
So it's all about fear mongering, and let's retire that thing and look at what socialism really means, or more specifically, democratic socialism, the vision that Mamdani actually stands for, and a lot of people are now paying attention to that, right?
Yep.
This is a system that keeps markets, keeps democracy, but reins in the chaos of unregulated greed. It says the government should step in to make life livable, public transit that's free and efficient, childcare that doesn't bankrupt families. In fact, Mamdani was saying the other day that the average childcare provider in New York gets about $25 an hour, which is not a livable wage in New York.
No, sad.
Okay, he wants to bump it up to what a professor or a college teacher gets, about $100,000 or so. That makes sense. Tenant protections, and yes, even city-owned grocery stores to ensure people aren't held hostage by price gouging.
Oh.
One of the uh, owners of like some multiple grocery stores in New York, a billionaire, was freaking out that, oh, we work on razor-thin margins and we are going to lose money. We are going to pull out
Yeah.
of the city.
Your home looks like you definitely work on a razor thin margin. Yes, it does.
Oh,
In Hampton. Yeah.
okay. So that those are some of the things that I am concerned about, Marie.
Yeah.
And hang on one second. If you guys can continue, I just need to uh, uh, get my power bank up. My battery is running low on my computer over here.
No worries.
When that happens.
Mohammed, what you have said is really important, and we can't say it enough. A lot of great journalists have talked about the difference between all the isms, capitalism, socialism, communism, and all the things, right? Is that um, and then they throw it back at us, right? That, we're calling them fascists. Well, by definition, what is going on in the Trump regime is fascist. By definition, what our great new guard candidates are talking about is simply fair capitalism. It is democratic socialism, which is fair capitalism. So it is a totally different situation to call the far right fascist, because they are. They're undermining. They're going after immigrants. They're going after people of color. They're going after women. They're going after the LGBTQ community. It is the definition of fascism, period. There is no world under which democratic socialism is communism or socialism. It just is not under any circumstance. So, I'm not having it.
Yeah, that's one thing which most people are not realizing, that the other ism that is controlling the country right now is fascism. And that's what Trump and
But
his
that's real. Like that's my point, is that actually is happening, folks. This is fascism that has been implemented by Trump. He's gotten farther along in 11 months than Orban did in his regime. It's significant to look at that all of the other fascist governments, he went faster than Putin did when Putin took back over again. Like this is pure, unadulterated. There's no other way to look at it objectively. So we are where we are.
Okay, Marie, thank you so much. We got Carl Moose joining us to give us some update on what's happening in the scientific world. And again, thank you, Marie, for joining us. Thank you for the amount of information that you share with us and the kind of guests that you bring with us. Carl, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
We are doing very well. So where are you now, my friend? Are you at an airport, or are you on
No,
terminal?
yeah, last week I was coming back from Albany, and all the flights got switched around. So no, I'm back in Chicago today, and today I want to talk about my son. I have a son, and I'm kidding. I want to talk about my son and your son and everybody's son, and what's going on with the son, the SUN, not my SON.
Okay, and you want to switch on your camera also so we can see your face, or are you
So,
still?
Yeah, unfortunately, where I am, if I switch on the camera, my internet gets staggered. So I've got
Okay.
unfortunately, it's not good. But I want to talk about the solar cycle that we're in. A lot of folks are are enjoying the auroras that we were actually able to see in Chicago, which is pretty unusual. And we're in a solar cycle right now. About every 11 years or so, the sun goes through a cycle, and we're at the tail end of what they call cycle 25, which is where we have the most powerful solar radiation, and we're coming to the end of that here. And that's why we're seeing the auroras that we're able to see. So it's really interesting. But from a scientific standpoint, we're very fortunate because the core of the Earth is a hot molten core of iron, and that's what creates the magnetic field around the Earth, which gives us the protection from solar flares. And without that protection, we'd be in big trouble. And it's an invisible thing that we study and we understand pretty well these days. But that's why, as that solar flare comes through our atmosphere and our magnetic sphere, it lights up, and it's because of the magnetic field and the cycle that we're in with the sun. But this can have some significant effects on radiation exposure, communication interruption, GPS, satellites, power fluctuations. So there's some things that that do occur on Earth when we have these cycles every 11 years or so of high solar flare intensity, and then we're going to go back into the cycle. So for the next 11 years, it kind of settles down a little bit. But from a scientific standpoint, this is something that anytime you're putting something in outer space, you've got to be concerned about that, because once you get outside the magnetic field of the Earth, that solar radiation can really have a adverse effect on things. And luckily, the folks that out there that are keeping their eye on this stuff from a technology standpoint understand this and can keep us safe from those types of activity.
So, is there anything that we should be concerned about, Carl, as far as effects on not just the spectrum that you spoke about, but is there any kind of a health effect associated with something like this?
Well, it's fortunately, again, back to our magnetic field, we're pretty fortunate because we're protected. So there's been a lot of studies that have been done with regard to the effect on humans and other creatures, living creatures. And fortunately, our magnetic field keeps us pretty safe. So we're in a bubble. We don't have a lot to worry about from that perspective. The biggest concern is when we start putting satellites, and again, in the last 10 years, the number of satellites that have been up in space they've gone up tenfold. About 10 years ago, there were only around 1,000 satellites in space. Now there's over 10,000. So that's where it can start to affect us on a day-to-day basis with regard to GPS, communication, even things like power outages. But for the most part, as living creatures, we're protected by that magnetic field, which is the good news.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Carl. And that's Carl Moose joins us every week with a perspective on what is happening in the scientific world. And again, we are so blessed to have a great team over here, folks. And if you want to join the conversation, the number to call in is 773-763-9278. Let me repeat that number, 773-763-9278, and you can join the conversation. This is the Lightning Strike. We come every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WCPT, Chicago's progressive talk radio station. But I wanted to finish off the conversation, guys, today with what's happening with ICE in Chicago and where do we stand on these people now. So a federal judge in Chicago has ordered the release of hundreds of people detained by ICE in the Chicago area, finding that their arrests likely violated a 2022 consent decree known as the Castanon-Neva versus DHS. You want to talk a little bit about that, Reed? Feel free, but specifically, 13 individuals must be released immediately. Up to plus or minus 615 more could be moved to alternatives to detention by November 21st, which is coming up. ICE's own documents show of the 607 detainees listed, only 16, that is less than 2.6%, had criminal histories that marked them as high public safety risk. And those are the people that they were supposed to go after, but they are just throwing this wide net out there. The facility in question, the Broadview ICE facility, is under scrutiny for inhumane conditions. A temporary restraining order requires the ICE to improve conditions, that is, provide showers, bedding, clean toilets, private calls with attorneys. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the videos of these people just talking about having to sleep on the floor, overflowing bathrooms, having to just take garbage bags and clean bathrooms. And this is America, folks. This is not some Salvador or some of those countries that have these kind of prison cells. Enforcement actions have been aggressive. We all know that. Large-scale raids in Chicago and suburbs, some involving masked agents, clashes with protesters, claims of use of tear gas, chemical agents. Transparency remains a problem. We all know that. And during a recent federal shutdown, funding disruptions, ICE enforcement continued, but reporting of detention numbers, arrests, and deportations was delayed or missing. This is something that we should be paying attention to. So some local leaders are going after this, and we are definitely going to be monitoring this. This heavy-handed federal approach is eroding trust in immigrant communities and raising safety concerns, and faith leaders and activists have been arrested in protests outside the Broadview facility. Now, why does it matter to us now? The fact that only a small fraction of those detained have serious criminal histories, less than 3%, clashes with the federal narrative that the raids target the worst of the worst. That discrepancy raises questions about enforcement's priorities and fairness. Legal oversight is stepping in. So, Reed, you want to talk about the consent decree violations?
Yes, I do. First, I want to start off, though, by mentioning about the Broadview facility. I used to have an office in that building for a while, a couple of years. And so I'm kind of familiar with its interior. And half of that building is offices where agents go in, write up the reports, and they process people that they've detained. The other half is the actual detention facility there. I would get in there sometimes to check it out. And as I recall, I don't remember there being showers in there. I don't remember there being beds in there. It's all steel seats and that sort of thing, very uncomfortable, never intended to be a place where people are kept overnight. So it's not something that is conducive to a long-term, I mean, I'm saying more than a few hours place to detain people. Otherwise, it's not really humane, in my personal opinion. But something Adriana was saying a little while ago is that a lot of people aren't believing that ICE is going after anything other than criminals. Well, the statistics you just cited, Mohammed, indicate that that is not the case. They are going after people without criminal histories. And in fact, ICE itself has admitted in many cases that they conducted unlawful arrests. They've admitted this to the judge, who also believes that they're not going after criminals, and that's Judge Jeffrey Cummings of the Northern Federal District for Illinois. He's the one who's overseeing all this now with ICE agents and issuing orders to release these people. And he's citing a consent decree that was entered into in February of 2022 between the city of Chicago and DHS, or the federal government, because it was shown that since 2018, ICE has been conducting these widespread, indiscriminate immigration sweeps, and they've also been using pretextual vehicle stops to detain people without reasonable suspicion and detain people without warrants. And this is what the judge is getting at, is that these people, anybody who was arrested without a warrant or arrested pursuant to some pretextual vehicle stop, they are to be immediately released as soon as practicable, and they are to be released without the requirement of a bond or any other restrictions on them. You can set them up for an immigration hearing, but you can't just keep them overnight. You have to let them go, and that's pursuant to a divorce decree. What I'm thinking about when I think about these decrees, this is a decree, a consent decree that oftentimes municipalities, state governments will enter into when they're in a dispute with the federal government, where they don't admit maybe culpability, but they are settling and deciding to have an agreement. And in this case, from that 2018 beginnings of these sweeps, there was a group of immigration advocates who sued ICE. and they got the ICE to agree to let these people out. And this decree was supposed to be for anybody arrested without a warrant or pursuant to a vehicle stop from it's supposed to take effect from February of 2022 until February of next year. So ICE has not been complying with this consent decree, and it needs to start doing it. And Judge Cummings is calling them on it. So we'll see where it goes. But Friday there were supposed to be 13 people released. I
Yep.
didn't see the Chicago News. I hope they were. But there's over 600 other people who've been getting arrested since last June, up through October 7th, that the judge is probably going to be ordering released. And he has not found them to be any threat to public safety, and they don't have criminal records. All of them arrested without warrants or under one of these fake traffic stops. And ICE in the interior in Chicago like that has no justification for stopping vehicles. There's no way they can possibly have the reasonable suspicion that somebody in the car is in the country without permission. You can't tell that from a car.
Okay. Well, let's look at some of the numbers. In 2024 fiscal year, ICE enforcement and removal operations have made 113,431 arrests. Okay. So according to USA Facts now, and I'm looking at these numbers, there were 149,000 total ICE arrests, combining both the ERO administrative arrests and arrests made by ICE's Homeland Security investigations. So these guys have made like over 150,000 arrests. And come on, the annual arrest numbers are very high, over 100,000 people in the fiscal year 2024 alone. A significant portion of those arrested had criminal convictions or pending charges, according to ERO. But in Chicago, ICE is also detaining a lot of people with no criminal record.
Yep.
And that is unacceptable. It's just like the crime is they are brown, okay? Lack of a better word. I just want to see maybe I can do a little bit of digging into it for our next show. How many people by race that were arrested by ICE? What do you guys think?
I think I could bet a check that a paycheck that there's a disproportionate number of Hispanic or brown-skinned people who've been getting arrested. They don't necessarily have to be Hispanic, just be brown-skinned or black. There's a whole lot more of them than I think you'll find a proportionate number of, say, people of Polish descent or Irish descent, whom I know are in Chicago, many of whom are there without lawful status. Their visa overstays or just managed to sneak into the country anyway. They blended in with Chicago society, and they're not getting arrested. I just don't see the numbers amongst them being arrested.
And that is a concern that I have as a boomer person. Let's see what is the concern that our Gen Zs have over here. Adriana, Dali, you want to finish off the show today with what are your concerns about what is happening?
My concern is that it is going to shape how we view politics, and especially now with the redistricting happening in a lot of different states. I want to know how history teachers feel, having to teach children, hey, this is what the law is. And I want to know if a child raises their hand and says, well, if this is the law, how come this is happening right now? I just want to know what the answer they can give them, because redistricting is supposed to happen every 10 years, yet it's happening in the middle just to kind of hope in a hope that Republicans can take over and push out Democrats. I found out recently that Indiana is not going to redistrict, even though all signs pointed that they would, in full to the pressure of our president. And also just for the next generation of voters to see everything happening, if their minds will shift for what they feel is for the better or for the worst. How are they going to look at this current administration and administrations to come, and what they think is going to happen? Because with all of this stuff happening with Trump and Epstein, and you see how we've impeached presidents for less. what is going to happen? What possibly could make Trump get impeached? Because if we impeached, it was Bill Clinton for the scandal with Monica Lewinsky, and we're not impeaching Trump for his felonies, for his appearance in the Epstein files, for his um
Well,
his character.
some of the emails that have come out have been pretty graphic about what Trump has allegedly done when he was with Epstein in his house. Okay, so all of those things are going to come out, but I don't think that Trump is going to face any uh, legal challenges because health-wise, he's supposed to be very, very sick also. So who knows what's going to happen to Trump? But it's not so much Trump that I am concerned about. I'm concerned about the system that has led to the creation of somebody like Trump.
Well,
Nadi, I see
Mohammed,
you shaking your head. Yes, Rick, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interject it real quick. Something I want the listening audience to be aware of with regard to gerrymandering is that Trump has directed his DOJ, and Pam Bondi is bringing a lawsuit against the state of California for its redistricting. And yet the gerrymandering that went on in Texas, in Ohio, in North Carolina, and Missouri, they had nothing to say because the gerrymandering there resulted in extra seats for Republicans. But when it's done in California and the changing of the lines, the district lines have resulted in probably more Democratic seats. Now suddenly the DOJ is concerned about racial discrimination against Hispanic people.
Okay, so we got 1 minute to wind up. We'll give Dolly the end of the last word on the show today. Dolly, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly concerned about the way that this will affect families for years to come, not just ICE raids, but the seemingly idea that we can sweep crime and a fascist regime under the rug so swiftly, and not have any consequence. How, again, like Adriana was talking about, how will our children take this, and what will they learn from this? Will they learn that they can do the same things when they grow up? It's insane. And I just wish I'm just scared that more and more people in Chicago will be taken and harmed, because what I really, really care about is Chicagoan safety, bodily autonomy, and it's depressing when I see very, very, very kind people being attacked.
Well, and on that note, folks, it's 10 o'clock. We have come to the end of the show today on the Lightning Strike. And our guests today have been Michael Sweezy, former Secret Service agent, Dr. Bryan Maxwell, who's running for the Senate to replace Dick Durbin, and also Nick Unijewski, who's running for the local Senate for Illinois, I believe the 6th district for Senate. And you are welcome to call in and listen to us and talk to us off air also. The number to call in if you want to leave a message after the show is 312-TLS 8182. On that note, thank you all very much for tuning in. Over and out. Back to WCPT.
Good day, Chicago.